Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Celtic Way. It's Friday morning. It's the last morning briefing of the week. I am your host, John McGinley. I'm joined by Tony Haggerty. We always have a good time when Tony's on the show. Me, myself, and Tony. We always have a bit of a laugh. I'm hoping we'll have a bit of a laugh this morning, Tony, just to get over whatever happened last night. That was a comedy show in its own right.
It was indeed. Wasn't sure if I was watching Dave, Celtic Dave channel or that. You know what I mean? Just yeah, you have to kind of take your medicine in those ones and quickly move on. But yeah, I mean, the one quality moment in the game, John, was the goal. I think we cling to that a wee bit, But my goodness, a wee lesson from a decent team who are good at ball retention and have a big centre forward who can actually hold the ball in, play others in. Adam Ida's watching. I would give Adam Ida a DVD of that and say, see, Robin, watch that. That's how you play as a centre forward. But yeah, John,
Interesting, because I was watching Adam Ida last night. I think we'll get into that later. Actually, we didn't discuss that before we came on air, but now you bring it up, I think we can have a wee discussion about it. I know that Adam Ida thing is a little bit overdone for people, but I think last night did show up some deficiencies in his game that he needs to improve alongside his goal scoring. But first of all, folks, listen. We're here for the next half an hour to 45 minutes, depending on what kind of chat we get into. There's quite a lot to get into. With the match itself, we're not going to go too in depth on the match, but we also have Brendan Rodgers' comments after the game. Now, we didn't have these on the live show last night. Myself and Ryan did a brief kind of summary of what happened yesterday evening, and then we actually went away and we got the audio through from Brendan Rodgers and his press conference in Italy, and he had some interesting things to say, which we're going to cover in the early part of this show. But thanks for joining us live, everyone in the chat already. There's lively debate already in the chat. As you can imagine, Tony, the live chat last night was also lively. Just your thoughts on the game in general. 5-1 defeat's never nice, but you put it in perspective of pre-season, or how do you take what we saw last night? Is it a kind of lesson learned type thing?
Yeah, I'm trying to put it in perspective of pre-season, John. Get all that fitness and results don't matter. It mattered on Saturday when you beat an English Premier League team, so it has to matter. And again,
or did it, Tony? Did it matter at the weekend? That's the point.
Yes, I suppose. Yeah, maybe not. But I think we've been talking about this for a while. There is still a lot of time for Celtic to address the issues that are clear in the team, the deficiencies and where they're lacking in the team. But the Champions League is hurtling headlong towards you, and that's a Champions League calibre side, John. Mm-hmm. And they'll rip you apart. And at this moment in time, Celtic are not ready for a test of that magnitude. And worry's too strong a word. I think maybe concern in terms of where we're headed before we enter this Champions League. And I know Celtic are traditionally a last-minute.com transfer window kind of team, but if we have identified targets, then there is no point in doing this dance by low-balling clubs. If we have identified targets and they want X amount for them, then we have to start sort of saying, right, okay, let's go and do some bits of business here. Brendan Rodgers said he feels that they will do lots of business or still got lots of work to do before the transfer window shuts. Go and do it because Celtic need it, John.
So I think you're right. I think worry isn't the word. I think so. I saw a bit of chat last night about how Ajax aren't a good team and all this kind of thing. Right. The important thing about this summer and Celtic's pre-season this summer is that Sporting, Newcastle United and Ajax are all in the Champions League phase already this season. They await as potential opponents of Celtic in the league phase of the Champions League if Celtic make it through the qualifying playoff. So I think what we've seen from the 3 matches against those teams, and again, you can't read too much into it because there's a lot of fitness, there's a lot of rotation in the team in terms of substitutes. I think we've seen the full gamut of what Celtic in Europe looks like. Sometimes, we sometimes play really well and play really incisively through the press and really punish teams, and we do have that cutting edge about us, and that was on display last year in the Champions League and in pre-season last year. We do have that cutting edge breaking through these teams. I think at times there's a real defensive frailty in the team. And I think it was even apparent in the first goal Celtic conceded, in the way that possession was lost in the attacking half. And in that transition, Celtic struggle, and they still struggle. And that resilience and organisation is something that needs to come to Celtic along the way. Now, for Celtic last season, it came a little bit too. It didn't come too late, but it came a little bit later because we had the Dortmund debacle and all that. But then Celtic did find that within themselves against Atalanta. And so what I'm hoping is last night, and I saw a few comments in the live chat this morning to this effect, is that last night maybe is a bit of a wake-up call for this team to move forward and find that defensive resilience and organisation a bit earlier from the start of the season rather than waiting, a few weeks or a couple of months into it. That's what I'm hoping to take. I'm hoping that this kind of little 3-game Champions League taster has been really useful for the squad and the players. And that's the hope I'm taking out of last night, despite the result, despite the defeat, which was obviously disappointing.
And that's fine, John. If you're taking those learnings, that's great. But if you're signing new players, you need them to come in and integrate with those learnings and fit into that system that you're going to play and adapt moving forward. And I think that's the Celtic supporters' concern, that if you're going to sign players, they should have been in for these games, John, because these are Champions League tests. Right, these are Champions League teams that you've just mentioned. They're in the league phase. These are potential opponents. I know not a hell of a lot can be gleaned from pre-season matches, but you can see things. You can open your eyes and and watch certain styles of play, certain methods, patterns, etc., and also the way your opponent set up against you, because Celtic did to Ajax in the first half what Ajax did to Celtic in the second half, and they were far more effective at it in the second half. And I'm like you. I wanted those players to be in for these games so that you have some kind of integration and settled team pattern, method, style of play, and tactics for going into the Champions League qualifiers. If Celtic do leave it late again, John, we'll be scrambling about getting players in, and then you're hoping that they will all of a sudden turn it on in a two-legged affair, which we've already said it is season defining, John. You cannot,
that is for me. Yeah.
You cannot escape that. You cannot escape that or run away from that. And at this moment in time, Celtic are not equipped for that. That's not to say it won't change in the next few weeks, but they're leaving it very, very late for all of that to fall into place.
If Celtic go out with this playoff, I think there'll be a lot of defensive justification that it isn't the be-all and end-all this season, but going into it, it is a season-defining fixture. Like, I'm happy to say that. Now, some fans might not see it that way, Tony. Some fans just might see Europe as the bonus that is, but I think for me and for yourself and for some others on the Celtic way, Europe is the main event for Celtic at the moment. It's where all the excitement and all the energy is. It's where all the resources are. It's where the attraction is for the players we want to see play in the Celtic shirt. So I totally agree with you in saying it's season defining. I think some people might quibble with that, especially if Celtic do not go through, but I think you're spot on there. So let's get into what Brendan Rodgers had to say after the match. There was a press conference in Como. Brendan Rodgers faced the media, was asked all sorts of questions. I think the transfer stuff is probably the most interesting stuff to take out of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read out some of it. I'm going to read out the key line in particular that I think jumps off the page and right into your mind. And then we'll just discuss that a little bit. We'll also try and take in some comments from the live chat too. So Brendan Rodgers talked about the match. He talked about how he felt actually for the first hour Celtic were competing in the game. I don't think I'd go as far as an hour. I think he's been a little bit kind there. I think it was really the first half. I think Celtic were immediately under the cosh from the second half onwards. But then he was asked if last night was a bit of a reality check for the boys, for the team, and kind of what we're kind of discussing. Is it lessons learned, etc.? And so this is what he started to say. He said, I think that's the nature of pre-season. It's designed to grow, and by the end of it, you've had really good tests. We saw that tonight. This is where it gets a little bit interesting. I was seeing players on the next level and how they cope. And it's a reminder, really, of the work we have to do on the pitch and off the pitch. He talked about a little bit about that, and then he was asked about transfers and reinforcing the squad. And this is the line I think that jumps out for a lot of people, because for me, I don't think escalate. I think escalation's maybe too strong a word, but it's certainly a little bit of a ramp up in the messaging that Rodgers is putting out there on transfers. He said, "It depends on what your ambition is. As if your ambition is to really progress and push forward, then we need to improve the squad." Now, that's a key line for me, Tony. He was asked further about recruitment and identification of talent and how it works. And this is interesting because, again, this is stuff that's come up on the briefing this week in the live chat. So I think people will find interest in this answer. He was asked whether, he has a list of players that he, like Celtic, are working through. And his response to this was, how it mostly works at most clubs is that you have a recruitment and analytical team that scour your markets to find the players that are suitable within your price range and, really importantly, have quality. They then get presented to you, and then it's whether the players I think are right for us. If they're not, then we've got to keep looking. If they are, then we've got to try and see if we can get the deal to get them in. And that's obviously the club who will then do that. But listen, Celtic, there are no secrets in it. There are no secrets. They will look to get the best deal for the club and get the best players in possible. My job is to coach and demand we get the highest level player we can if we want to keep developing. So, again, Rodgers, I think, ramping up a little bit of his messaging on transfers there, Tony. What's your kind of take on what he said? I think you'll largely agree with what he said. What do you think about him saying it last night after the nature of that defeat and kind of what it means for Celtic summer going forward?
It's a warning shot over the bow, isn't it? He's telling people, I need players, and I don't just need any players, I need quality players, because he glimpsed the future there in the Champions League, didn't he?
I think that's what he's driving at. Yeah,
let's be honest. We all enjoyed last season in the tournament and what they did and some of the results. But my goodness, last night was the wake up call. So when you start to talk about things like ambition, John, you're questioning people, aren't you? You're saying, well, help me in my quest, and then starting to explain the process to sort of say, well, here's my role in it. Sorry about my dog. I don't know what's going on. And he's outlining his role in it, saying that the lists are presented to him, but I mean, he can dispute that list, can't he? In terms of quality, and say, you know what, I think we should go for player ABC. So he has a big hand in this, John. But I think last night, the quote about ambition for me, as you say, leapt out at you. He is saying to people upstairs, I need a hand here. We need to spend money, because at this moment in time, we are not good enough to cope with the Champions League qualifiers. Never mind getting into the Champions League phase, John. He is saying this team is not equipped for the qualifiers. Basically, that's my take on that. That's what I think he's saying. And he's just letting people know, and he's letting the fans know his role in it all. And lots of people are saying it's kind of, history's repeating itself here, John. And the fact that he hasn't committed beyond three years, stuff like that. People.
How much do you think that's a factor, Tony? Is this part of it? Because I'm seeing a lot of this conversation around, Rodgers isn't committing to the club, so this is Celtic kind of asserting their power in this dynamic. Why would Celtic go out and spend loads of money on Brendan Rodgers' player if Brendan Rodgers isn't, signing a new contract? Is there validity to that? Or really, Celtic's transfer strategy should be above who the manager is, surely. And I know Brendan Rodgers is part of the identification of talent, but if there's a kind of committee process there, then Celtic should still be ensuring that they've got the quality in the squad, regardless of what Brendan Rodgers' future is.
Well, you're always told that no man's bigger than the club, so you'd always be preparing to be, we're forever told at the AGM that we want to provide the manager with a world-class football team. I don't see that, John. I see lip service paid to things like that. I mean, that doesn't matter who the manager is and how long they're there for. You want to present them with as good a team as possible within your financial parameters. I've said before, I'm not asking for Celtic to go out and spend 50 million quid, but we are asking them to loosen the purse strings a bit on the money that they have in the bank, which is pretty substantial. And I think if any manager deserves it, then it's Brendan Rodgers. And
Mm-hmm.
regardless if he's not committed to further than this year, I'm like you. I just want to build and build and build. And we still have a wonderful opportunity to build on what we did last year with the same man in situ. And if he does hand the baton on, then he's handing it to somebody, and you're in a good space and a good place. But if they don't do that, I mean, there's all sorts of rumours swirling about that there's a list for if they qualify for the Champions League or if they don't. See that kind of talk. I just I
That's
think
that's reductive. That's
around that.
reductive thinking. That
Yeah,
that would be a that's a problem. I
yeah,
think
yeah.
in the general outlook of what the club wants to be. I don't think you can really hedge your bets when you. I said this the other day. I think I maybe wrote about it on the website, but decisiveness is so key in this realm. Like you can't really and and you know like it just doesn't work like that. Or if you are doing that, then set yourself an earlier internal deadline. Now we know there's a transfer deadline of the end of August, right? But Celtic have known about this qualifier for a year.
Oh,
They've known Kyogo was not going to be in the squad. They've known since January that Nicholas Kuhn wasn't going to be in the squad. They've known since April that Jota was going to be out for the rest of the calendar year. Like I'm not trying to put pressure on Celtic here. I hope everyone takes us in good faith. I know we're speaking quite negatively around the club and everything, but I hope everyone watching takes us in good faith when we say that we want the best for Celtic to push forward and succeed and give us the excitement that we know Celtic is capable of. And I just think this and ahhing, this kind of we'll spend this if we qualify or we'll do that. It's not for me, Tony. It's just not my thing, and I don't
no,
think it's a lot of people's thing. You know.
we we are the and champions of Scotland and of Europe, and we have been for a long time. Nobody can dislodge us from that. I know we're jesting, but we are never proactive, are we? We're always reactive. If there was ever a season to be proactive, it was this season. Because as I say, the highs of last season were fantastic in the elite club competition in world football. It's just wonderful to be there. And as you say, you outlined all of those things that you've said there. These are not things that have blindsided Celtic. They have known about them for a long, long time. And I just, John, we're looking for that. We spoke about it last week, I think. We're looking for this spark to ignite Celtic's pre-season, haven't we? In terms of the play, the football, the method, the style, the pattern, and also in terms of the signings. Now, we love Kieran Tierney, but we know what Kieran Tierney is all about. We know he's a fantastic player. We're encouraged by Nygren, the early signs of Nygren, but we've not had that marquee, that one where we say he's going to be great. And what's the famous songwriter said, you can't start a fire without a spark. John, we need more guns for hire here in terms of signing players.
Tony's
It's a,
dancing in the dark, everyone.
yeah, well, I think I am. I think Brendan Rodgers is dancing in the dark as well, to be fair.
um,
But we do,
oh,
right?
yeah.
That's the point, and that I think, and the manager is now getting to the point where he's saying, yeah, he's gone from saying, yeah, I still think there's lots of business to do, and then he's hit them with the zinger, the ambition
Mm,
word. Match my ambition, match the fans' ambition. John, there was fans that went to Como last night to
mm.
watch Celtic. They paid a lot of money because it's not a cheap place to go. Very picturesque, and I get all that wonderful surroundings, but they've watched their team get turned over.
I mean, I'm consistently in awe and humbled by the amount of money that Celtic fans put into Celtic. Like it's actually everyone knows it, but it's also in a way underrated when you look at the accounts and you look at the financials. Celtic is a well-run club as a business. There's no denying that. But underpinning Celtic's power and success is the money that regular fans, put into the club through tickets. Merchandise is massive these days. And again, on top of that, even the money that Celtic don't see, the away trips, the away tickets, etc., the amount of money that is spent on this passion that people have is outrageous. And I think it's on the club to now. This is probably another conversation, and how the club perceive the support, and do they take the support for granted. We might not want to get too much into that, but I do think there's a general disconnect between the want of fans and the direction of the club. Now, people would argue that it's all about making sure the club is in a healthy place. You can't go out and spend lots of money. And this is a misconception, I think, Tony. I don't think we're asking for Celtic to go out and spend so much money that's unsustainable, for starters. I don't think anyone's even asking that Celtic go out and spend loads of money. Kieran Tierney and Benjamin Nygren are clearly part of Brendan Rodgers' first team plans. Both were very cheap, in terms of initial transfer outlay. I'm sure wages are another issue, which is very valid. The wages thing is very valid in terms of, can Celtic attract these £8 to £12 million players and keep the wage bill under control? I get that argument. But it's about bringing in players who excite and energise Brendan Rodgers and make him feel like his squad has been strengthened. That's what we're after. And sometimes that will cost money, and sometimes it won't necessarily. But it's about giving Brendan Rodgers those tools, because he really likes Nygren, and he obviously really likes Tierney. So it's not about going out and spending £20 million. It's about giving Brendan Rodgers what he feels he needs in that squad. And yeah, I mean, we could say it forever until Celtic actually make action. I just think for as long as Celtic, the overall strategy of Celtic is quiet or silent, which we know it is, or action is taken, it's inevitable that this anxiety is going to build amongst the wider support.
Yeah, and I think that's the key word there, John. Two A words: ambition, and also anxiety is beginning to build amongst the supporters. And I think anxiety is building in the manager as well. I think he sees what's coming down the road. And as you say, I'm not saying, we're not advocating Celtic go out and spend 40, 50 million quid. But what we are saying is that this manager's entitled to say to the board, look what happened last season. If you help me, give me the tools, the right tools, I can replicate that. Because they can replicate that and possibly go one better. I think that's my ambition for Celtic, John. I don't want to get knocked out in the playoff round of the last 16. I want to get to the last 16. I want to get to the last 8. But I look at it, and unless something drastic happens in the next few weeks before the end of August, I don't see that. And I see these qualifiers being fraught with danger. I really do, regardless of who Celtic draw. And we've been speaking for a long time about, we wanted to not so much sail through the qualifiers, because I don't think you can in Europe, but I wanted Celtic to be in a position where the qualifier, posed no real significant problems, where you were comfortable when you got through. But I think that anxiety is, it's going to reach fever pitch, John, before the qualifiers. And if Celtic continue to, be tardy over transfers, continue to lowball when they're clearly interested in players. The Balikwisha rumours have been going on for goodness knows how long, right?
I'm actually just so skeptical of stuff like that. Not because I think there obviously is some sort of Celtic interest there in some capacity, but I say this consistently. When it drags on and on and on through multiple transfer windows, it seems to me that the will of Celtic to sign this guy isn't there. The same as Quistgarden. I think the whole Quistgarden thing was totally overblown by a lot of people, and I think, but this is what happens, Tony, when there's a lack of information or acknowledgement from Celtic what the strategy is. Nobody's asking for Celtic to give a sentence by sentence rundown of exactly what they're going to do every summer. But when there's a kind of absence of information, it gets filled by speculation. That is just what happens. And whether it be the media or supporters or whoever, that's just what happens. I think Celtic need to control that better.
And also, John, any Celtic transfer it never comes from Celtic, does it? The
Yeah.
information, it always comes from the selling club or the club.
Which is fair enough to an extent. I think
Yeah,
there's an extent of the club protecting their own interests and all
I
that, and I
understand
understand that. I think I'm maybe just talking about, like, let's hear from Paul Tisdale, let's hear from Michael Nicholson.
Yeah.
I never hear from these guys, and they're
Having
shut off to it. They're not open. They're not open to do an interview with you or anything, Tony. That's just not how it goes.
And I'm like, you understand that you don't want to be shouting about your transfer business from the
Yeah,
rooftops,
of course. Yeah.
but there could be a bit of quid pro quo with it, and just let you in on what's happening, either on or off the record. But it's very difficult to hear from the likes of Michael. You never hear from Michael Nicholson until it's the AGM. I don't think Paul Tisdale has he given an interview to anybody?
And listen, we're not even asking these guys to open themselves up to
Yeah, well,
the wider Scottish media. Do an interview with do an interview with Celtic TV. Control the narrative, like control what you want out there. There's just not enough of that for me. But that's by the by. I think it's probably a little bit inside baseball on the media side of things, Tony. Some fans might not really get what we're driving at, but I do think there is a chance for Celtic to better control the narrative around this summer specifically, but also future summers and future ambitions.
It was ever thus, because I think one of the commenters asked us if we asked these questions of Melissa Tidsdale and Michael Nicholson, and my answer to that would be it would be great to get within feet of them, or in a platform like this. You just don't see them and you don't hear from them, and as you say, that vacuum and void has to be filled, and more often than not, it's filled by speculation, or it's filled from, the selling club, or people close to the situation from the club Celtic are trying to do business with, telling you snippets of information. Might be a whole story.
And we know agents we know agents are at it sometimes, Tony. We know other clubs are at it sometimes. I think it's important for Celtic to get their side of the story out there sometimes.
But yeah, and also yourself, since you came on, you've got a kind of blanket policy where we try and do it the right way. We don't respond to every rumour. We don't throw every rumour up there that, Celtic interested in a player. We try and make sure that, first and foremost, if something does break like that, then it's a bona fide source. There's some meat to the bone and there's some substance to it. Or else you would just be putting out, flyers all day, wouldn't you?
Some people will be watching thinking we do talk too much about rumours, but my counter to that would be what Tony says. There's a lot we don't. There's a lot of stuff out there that we don't cover.
Our group chat sometimes goes on to like 1 and 2 in the morning, isn't it? Because something will break from Azerbaijan, a source saying Celtic are interested in a player, and judgments have to be made on that. I mean, that's the side to this that you don't see, guys. And we come on here at 10 in the morning, having checked out something at 2 in the morning or something like that. But again, that's not a complaint. That's just the nature of the job. It's 24/7, and we love it. But going back to your original point, I think Celtic could control that narrative a bit more and enlighten ourselves and the wider fan base a lot more. It's just that it puzzles me as to why it's not better.
Yeah, I agree. So back to the Como Cup. Celtic are still in the Como Cup. That's the nature of this pre-season tournament. Celtic are still in Italy. They'll be training today. They'll be playing the Asian Champions League champions Al Ahly on Saturday evening, which I think is going to be another tough test, Tony. I don't think that's going to be an easy game, and it will be a much rotated team. And so we need to see how Celtic play. Sometimes when you get a bit of rotation, it livens up the performance. So we'll obviously wait and see on that game. I don't know much about Al Ahly. I'm assuming you don't either, Tony. So we won't go into it too much. What I will touch on, I'll let you come in a minute, but what I will touch on is Shin Yamada. Now, when the Celtic team was announced yesterday evening, you may have spotted Shin Yamada on the substitutes bench in the team announcement. Celtic then promptly, a few minutes later, posted a new team announcement image up for everyone to digest, and Shin Yamada was not on it. So there was a bit of confusion there. Was he injured? What's happening? What's going on here? So Rodgers clarified this after the game also in his press conference, and it turns out that Shinya Yamada just wasn't kind of registered in time. It was a bit of a red tape thing, Tony. I think last night's game officially fell under a kind of UEFA purview and to do with kind of registration, etc. He couldn't play. Brendan Rodgers said he was hopeful for the player that he might be able to play on Saturday, but there was no definitive statement on that. So just a little bit. I don't think there's too much in that. I've seen some people getting quite annoyed about that this morning, but it's just a run of the mill red tape thing for me.
But you always read when Celtic sign players or any club sign players,
yeah.
They sign a deal subject to international clearance. And we always take that as read that it goes through, but sometimes it takes longer, doesn't it? So it's clearly the case with Shinya Yamada that he's international clearance because they fall under the auspice of a UEFA game that hasn't come through. Brendan Rodgers is very hopeful that it will be through for the Ali game, so here's hoping he maybe makes some kind of appearance, John, from the bench. I think Celtic supporters are, they're clinging on to a lot at the minute, but they're clinging on to the fact that they want to see him because they've heard he is faster than Daisen Maeda, and I think everybody wants to see that in the eye test.
So I think the reason why Yamada travelled at all is because I think Celtic, I'm not sure whether there was maybe some debate around what kind of match it was and whether he would need to be designated or registered for it. So there is that. So we will see that. Just on the speed thing, there's a lot made about top speeds, but I actually heard from a Celtic coach that in football and in day-to-day football and in matches, it's really less about top speed. It's more about your ability to sustain top speed and also repeated accelerations, etc. So top speed is a very eye-catching metric, isn't it? You sometimes see headlines, the top speed, this guy's the quickest player in the Champions League, this guy's the quickest player, etc. But it was clarified to me at some point last season that from a coaching perspective, from an analytical perspective, within Celtic and other places, that it's less about what their raw top speed number is, and it's about how they sustain that over length, but then also in a repeated sense, which is why Daisen Maeda is so electric, because even from the time of Ange Postecoglou talked about his speed, but he always qualified that with his ability to go again and again and again, and that's actually what makes Daisen Maeda stand out. So that's interesting. Brendan Rodgers has talked up his speed and his physicality and his intensity, so I do like that. That sounds like a good combination for a forward to me, especially if he's got that natural goal scoring instinct. Obviously, we'd love to see him on Saturday, Tony, but we might have to wait for St Mirren.
Yeah, if he has to wait to St Mirren, so be it, but it'd be good to get a glimpse of him on Saturday, wouldn't it? See what he brings to the attacking table. I mentioned it at the top of the programme, you said we maybe come back to it, but I just feel that Adam Maeda is becoming the new kind of Celtic whipping boy. But there are times when you say to yourself, you're not helping yourself. I think Brendan Rodgers at one point was saying to him, wasn't he last night, watch the big man, watch Brown, and watch what he does. Because in terms of leading the line and being a big guy and being able to hold it up and play people in, there was a couple of times Adam Maeda fell with the ball, but he still managed to get a pass away. And you thought to yourself, okay, but more often than not, his first touch wasn't there. It was spinning up off him, defender getting in front of him. And also, he suffered a bit of cruel luck when the goalkeeper jabbed a leg out and deflected the shot onto the bar. Strikers are confidence player, aren't they? If that goes in, he feels better about himself. But I've been quite an Adam Maeda supporter since he came in. I always felt he would score goals for Celtic. And he has plundered a few goals and at times shown that he can lead the line, but at this minute in time, we need more, John, don't we? We need more from Adam Maeda in terms of his goal-scoring output and just in terms of his general all-round ability. There was two similar players last night playing at centre-forward or a traditional number 9 role, both similar stature, similar build, and you looked and thought there was night and day in terms of the way they did everything. That's fair, isn't it?
No, that is fair. And what I'd say about Ida as well, it's like if Celtic are going to use him as the outlet, and they were last night, Kasper Schmeichel was clipping a couple of balls over. They weren't long balls, but they were kind of clipped, targeted balls into Adam Maida's feet. Now, if that's just bouncing off Adam Maeda, it's doing nobody any good. He does need to retain it. He just needs to. He's too. It's like he's too excited or something, Tony. I don't want to get into his mind too much because obviously you can't tell, but it's like he's trying too hard sometimes. The ball just comes into him. It kind of he takes the first touch and then he's immediately just trying to get it off as quickly as possible. And maybe that's his instruction, and maybe that's something that the coaching staff need to alter around him. But it would surely be more prudent, especially if it's the ball from Kasper Schmeichel specifically, if he can just hold that and get the runners around him a little bit more, and use his own strength. He's got the strength, Tony. That's the thing about it. He has the strength and the power, I think, to be able to play that role, and we just don't see it often enough.
And I think half the battle is the battle that he's anticipating, i.e. the physical battle. So he's more intent on that than getting the ball under control. He has to protect the football better, John. Because the minute he protects the football, things happen. If he can get that under control straight away, immediately, then, you can build it around him. And he can do it, because we've seen him do it many times before. But, over the course of pre-season, I've watched him and I'm thinking, it's no sinking in here, is it? Whatever Brendan Rodgers is telling him, because I'm sure I saw him last night saying to him at one point, watch the big man, watch what he's doing, and do that. That's the way you play centre forward. That's how you do it. That's how you impress. That's how your game sharpens up. And I know Peter Grant in the commentary was going on about it as well, wasn't he? He was saying that compare the two of them too, but he did. There was an absolute compare and contrast exercise, and the difference was pretty stark, in terms of what you were watching. And I think the Celtic supporters are willing Adam Idah to do well, but when you come out and say things like, I'll score 30 goals, or I can score 30 goals this season and stuff like that,
I'm again, Tony. It's one of those things where what's the context around this? It's like that
maybe
question's put to him, isn't it? The question's
Yeah, of
put to him.
course.
He's not coming out and saying, I'm going to score 30
Yeah,
goals. He's asked, can you get closer to 30 this year? And he's going, yeah, I can get closer to 30 this year if I get the game time. And it's one of those ones where I look at those comments sometimes, those kind of comments, and I'm just like, how much of that is the player and how much of that is the kind of massaging of the narrative around it?
I guess that, but again, you're adult. You can choose to answer the question in whatever shape you want. If I was Adam Meada, I would have said, well, we'll see what happens. I don't set any specific targets, that kind of thing, or maybe my targets and goalposts will change moving along. And I know you're asked a simple, can I, yes or no, can you get 30 goals this season? Then you choose, be smart. Don't just turn and say, yes, I can. Caveat that and just sort of say, well, we'll see. Well, my immediate plans to get more game time, that kind of thing. Coach you with that, and don't mention any targets, because I think he did say, I got 20 last season in limited game time, that kind of thing, which he did, and he's not telling any.
It's like in isolation, it's a fair enough comment to make. Like, he's going to back himself.
Yeah.
I get it, but I get what you're saying. Because I think he's yet to even establish himself as a starter at Celtic. That's what he needs to do first, for me. And I've been saying that ever since he arrived. On loan even. I've been waiting for 18 months for Adam to become a real starter for Celtic who you can go, I'm happy with him starting a game for Celtic. And to be frank, I'm not at the moment. But
because you look at him and he should be a powerhouse, John. You should feel safe as houses with a guy like that in your number 9 role. He should be able to, rummel up defenders, as they say, and run the channels. And but I look at him, he looks the part. At this minute in time, he's just not playing the part. And again, there's always something there where you always feel that Adam Idah's trying to convince himself and the Celtic supporters. It's been there in flashes. You think, you know what? Aston Villa, Kilmarnock at Rugby Park, games like that, and other games where he's popped up with important goals. Motherwell away at Fir Park, the Scottish Cup final, Ibrox, stuff like that. When he has done things, you think there's a player in you, but we need to drag that out of you on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and I get why people like him. I get why people were rooting for him. I think that stuff last season, some of the stuff on social media was out of order, right? Specifically in terms of being videoed on night outs and etc. It's just totally out of order, and the way that was blown up, what didn't sit right with me, and I get all that, but purely from what I'm seeing on the pitch, I think we do need a little bit more from Adam Ida, and I guess we'll see. So yeah, Tony, we'll be back tomorrow with a live show for Al Ali after the match. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation today, folks. We've gotten into all sort of stuff. It was just, again, a little bit freeform at the moment because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of feelings around it. Some of it forms in our head as we're speaking. We actually don't write things for him to say on this show. I'm sure you can tell. So we're just kind of, I get it's a little bit off the cuff, etc. But hopefully you've enjoyed our discussion this morning. We've got lots more coming on the website today and tomorrow and over the weekend, actually. We have an in-depth feature on Benjamin Nygren going out tomorrow. And we've spoken to his former coaches, his former youth scouts, lots of people who have worked with Benjamin Nygren throughout his career from those early days, which I think is interesting, from the Gothenburg days into playing for Genk. It didn't quite work out at Genk for him, and that was referenced by Brendan Rodgers when he signed, and that he liked that he's kind of bounced back from that. We'll also hear from Benjamin Nygren as well. As you know, we have a reporter in Como at the moment, and he had a chat with Benjamin Nygren last night. Those comments will also be going out either late tonight or tomorrow morning, just so you know. So we've got a full kind of the full in-depth look at Benjamin Nygren over the next couple of days, Tony. I know you've been doing features on Kieran Tierney, Kasper Schmeichel, lots of stuff coming out over the weekend. So there's lots coming up on the Celtic Way.
Yeah, excellent. Just keep your eyes peeled for those going up on the website, guys. And and as usual, if you enjoy what we do, we ask you to subscribe, don't we? www.celticway.co.uk, and we thank everybody that has.
It's £1 for 6 months, Tony. It's £1 for 6 months. That's something like 16p a month. And I think it's well worth it. The subscription is well worth it, folks. You get ad-free access to Celtic news, which I think is a big thing for me. I'm so sick of all the pop-ups and adverts you get around places these days. So it's ad-free Celtic news. You get a bespoke app. You get loads of stuff. I'm not going to do the big hard sell, but just trust me, the subscription to the Celtic Way is worth it. So if you like what we do, you like what we say on a daily basis, consider a subscription on the website, celticway.co.uk/subscribe. We've got lots coming out today and over the weekend. We'll be hearing more from Brendan Rodgers. We were one of the first out there with Brendan Rodgers' comments last night because we had a reporter in Italy, and stuff like your subscription allows us to do that. So yeah, keep it tuned to the Celtic Way. We'll be live tomorrow on YouTube, Tony. So we're talking about the site there, but we will also be live on YouTube tomorrow. So we will see you then after the game, after Celtic play Al Ali. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining me, Tony. Thanks for everyone in the live chat and everyone in the comments below. I hope you have a great Friday night and a great Saturday, and we'll see you tomorrow evening.